Good evening. Open up your Bible to 1 Timothy chapter 6, if you would, please. 1 Timothy chapter 6. We're going to be looking at verses 6 through 10. There's a book called Requiem for Love, and one of the chapters in that book opens up with these words. A beggar asked a millionaire, how many more dollars would it take to make you truly happy? Have you ever read that? You know that story very well? Well, the rich man looked at the beggar, and while he's reaching down into the beggar's cup, he says, just one more. Just one more. And that is the trap of greed that promises that we'll be content if we just had just a little bit more, right? Like there was an employee strike, and one of the employees had this sign up in the picket line, and it read, time heals all wounds. Time and a half will heal them faster. Oh, man. If you or I were to go to a counselor, I meant to ask Theo about this, but I forgot. I had other things on my mind. But if we were to go to a counselor complaining of depression and anxiety, a sense of emptiness, and uncontrollable headaches, ulcers, and other problems like that, what do you think they might tell us? Do you think they might say, you know, you have the case of greed and materialism. You got really the case of I want, or I need, or desire, and for this, and this, and this, and that desire just never ends. Do you ever think that that might be something they would tell you? I don't know, Theo, would that be something that you might tell somebody, or maybe, probably not. Probably not. In our culture, greed, materialism aren't considered problems. And maybe saying greed and materialism is the wrong phrase. Maybe it's the I desire is the problem. We generally think it's greed. We generally think it's materialism because it's always I want this or I want that. But the problem, it always falls on that I problem, the heart and what we want. How content are we with what we have? If I were to ask you that question, how content are you with what you have? For those of us here and those of you who are online, how would you respond? Now, if I were to ask the question, how materialistic or how greedy would your answer change? I think most of us would say we're not materialistic, we're not greedy. And what are some of those signs, though, that we might struggle with contentment of materialism or maybe the way we think? Back in 2022, American credit card debt was $887 billion. All Americans on all our credit cards added up, that was how much debt we had. This year, I just saw it a few weeks ago, that surpassed $1 trillion in credit card debt. And what is the typical percentage, I think, for most people is 24.99% annual APR. That's that they're paying 25% each year on that debt. That's insane how much that is. But when we were looking at that, we have all this debt, and what are people out there wanting to do? Buy a house or buy a new car, upgrade the car. And it's always needing something new. And I get that. You know me, I like to get the newer phone or maybe the new gadget for this or the new gadget that. My biggest problem is buying on impulse. I want it, so I'm going to get it because I can get it on Amazon and get it the next day. How great is that? But if I wait just one day and I sleep on it and think about it, I realize the next day, I don't need that. I have this and it still works. Why would I want to get that? Another thing about our culture that makes it hard on us to be content is advertising. I used to think advertising does not work on me. I would get so fed ads, and Now I'm like on my phone, oh, there's another ad, what's that? Tap on that. Let's take a look at that. And now when you say things, like I mentioned this not too long ago, we had that JennAir oven sitting out there on the back porch. Still can't get it sold. And I was mentioning that to Chad Turnwald, and now I get ads for JennAir ovens. I never did a search or anything. It heard me. And now it knows. And ads are getting more specific to me. And so they're starting to give me things that, they know I'm talking about or they know I want. And we're taught that lie from advertising, and the lie that they're teaching us is you're discontent with what you had. If you had a better car, if you had a better house, a better phone, better equipment, a better Bible, why, you could preach better. If you had the next level of Logos Bible study software, you'd have better lessons. And we sometimes fall for that trap. If you just buy this one thing, and speaking of that, that is something we probably said to our parents. I know I've heard it from my kids. Dad, if you buy me just this one thing, I will never ask for anything ever again. Have you ever heard that one, that lie? Oh, I hear it all the time. Dad, I'll never ask for anything, and this is the one thing. And I've asked them, usually it's Jonah or Josh, I'll say, will you be forever content if I buy that for you? Yes. How long are they content for? A week? A day? An hour, maybe? Usually an hour. It doesn't take long for them to want something else. Paul told Timothy the truth about these matters. Timothy's and the folks that he was ministering to there in Ephesus, they needed these truths about contentment and about materialism. And we still need them today. The problems they had back then are the same problems we have today. We're no different. We still have those same issues, the same things that we long for and we need. But what is it when we say, like I've often told you, that I am rich? Now, do you believe that beyond? Do you really believe I'm rich? I'm not rich. Not according to the world standard. I got 4 kids. I am not rich. But I am. I am content because I have food. I have clothing. And I have shelter. What else do I need? I got those 3 things. It may not be the food I want to eat, or the clothing I want to wear, or the shelter I want in that particular area, but that's everything I need. And I always think about the Israelites, and when they're in their wilderness, and they're getting that manna. Now, every day they got food, and they begin to complain about it. Oh, they got clothing, it never wears out. They always have shelter. They have all those 3 needs met, and they should be content, but we always want more. I desire. So let's take a look at what Paul had to say about these matters. Let's make sure we are thinking about money and the desires, contentment, in a spiritually mature way. And it starts off here in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 and 8. But godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. There it is. That's it. It's an incredible basic truth. With these things, food and covering, that covering covers our bodies and our heads, we shall be content. We've brought nothing in the world. We can take nothing out of it. We know this. Every human being alive knows these things. We know it. Where then do we get the idea that the person who dies with the most things wins? Paul's point is that the wealthiest person in the world is the person who is content with what they have. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness coupled with contentment, being content. That's all it takes. And yet it's so hard. If you remember in the past I've said Christianity really isn't all that hard. living in the world makes it difficult. Because how hard is it to be content living in this world? It's hard. Because you see what everyone else has. You see all that they're doing and all the videos and all the joy that they seem to be having every day. Well, I want that joy. If I could just get to where they're at, I'd have that joy too. Right? At least that's what it's the way it's projected to us. Contentment is not a place or a station in life. It is simply one thing. It is a decision that we make on the level of our minds and our hearts. A decision that if my simplest needs are met, that's enough. Like what Paul was saying in Philippians chapter 4:11. Not that I speak from want, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. And he goes on explaining what he means by that. The decision of contentment means that we decide that life is not wrapped up in the things we have or own. There's nothing wrong with having things, right? There's nothing wrong with owning things, not at all. Jesus told us, beware, there in Luke 12, beware and be on your guard against every form of greed. For not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of his possessions. He knew that's a problem. It's a problem we will always have. We'll always have it. And Paul reminds us that we came into this world with nothing, and we will leave with nothing. So we should not spend our whole lives focusing on amassing as much stuff as we can. Now, does that mean Christianity requires a vow of poverty? Some religions have studied the Bible, and they've come to the conclusion, well, but we shouldn't have anything. We should sell everything, and we should live as poor as possible. We should not hold on to possessions. But that's not what he's saying here. That's not a requirement, nor is that the point. The point is that true happiness is not found in the things, it's found in contentment. And contentment can be found whether you have a lot of things or nothing at all. As Paul was saying, he had stuff, and when he didn't have stuff, in either situation, he found contentment because it was a decision he made. His needs were met, whether he liked the way those needs were met or not, he was happy. He was content. He had all he needed because godliness coupled with contentment is what we are after. Well, what is life really about? What are we striving for? Relationship building. Number one, relationship building is our relationship with God and building it with Him and with our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, with our family, with our friends, with those all around us, meeting new people. As Theo said, I think it was a couple of years ago, what's your story? Trying to build up those relationships. That's the focus. That's what God is expecting from us. And so contentment is a decision. And Paul decided that if he had food and he had clothing, he would be content with that. And contentment comes when we escape the servitude of things and find our wealth in love and in fellowship. And when we realize that our most precious possession that we really have is that possession we have of our relationship with the Father in heaven. And from there, Paul moves away from that positive aspect of contentment to a stern warning about discontentment. Look at verses 9 and 10 of chapter 6. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a snare, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil, and some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So notice those words you find here in these two verses. Those who want to get rich. For the love of money, we know about that one. And some who longing for it have wandered away. All of it all comes down to our desire. So it's not materialism that's the problem. I mean, that is a problem. It's not greed that's the problem, although that is a problem. The solution, the real problem that you need to find a solution for is our heart, isn't it? You can fix all these things. I have a quote here. I don't know if I'm going to get to it yet or not, but it's from Billy Graham. I'll wait till I get to it. And I want to come back to the idea of the heart and the real problem. Because what are some of the special dangers involved in the love of money? Well, first is the desire for money tends to be a thirst that's really insatiable. It's never taken care of. I mentioned before, oh, if I could get that one car, I'd be so happy. You get the car, after a while, it loses the newness and the luster, and you want the new model that's come out, or the new model. I think there's no better example, actually, than the phone, especially the Apple iPhones. I can't believe how much money people spend for an Apple iPhone. I'm an Android guy, so you know. But you got one, and then the next year's phone is the exact same phone. Less hard drive space, so you have to pay for their more space, and you might get a little bump in speed. That's it. And a new battery in it as well. If you could get a new battery in your old phone, it would work just as new. Do you know that? But they don't want you doing that. They want you buying a new one. And it's all about getting you to buy more stuff. Be discontent. Because if you're not discontent with what you got, you're not going to buy more stuff. And our world circles around that same idea over and over again. So it's never fulfilled, that desire. Second desire for money is founded on an illusion of security. Man, if I just had enough money, I'd be secure. And you would find some security in that. You would. You'd find some financial security. It would take care of some other problems. But ultimately, does it really secure life? Is it going to stop you from dying? No. Is it going to fulfill your relationship with God? No. It's not going to fill those greater needs that are inside of you. And yet so many people think, but this is what I need to get towards, if I just had some more. And they may start off with a noble cause, thinking, well, I need family security, so I really need to make more money. And they work and they work and they work, and their desires for that, and it builds and builds, and they get excited, and they want more security, more money. And it gets worse, and they get deeper, and then eventually they fall into the trap of greed. And the desire for money leads to greater anxiety. And more anxiety. And the more we amass, the more potential there is for breakdown and loss. The desire for money tends to make people more selfish. And man, that's true. It shocks me how I feel greedy some people are. We were talking about, I hope Jenny doesn't mind me bringing it up, but we were talking about her surgery. It used to be, when you had a surgery in cancer, while you were still on the operating table, they would check that whatever they took out to make sure they got everything. And if they did not, they would do it right then and there. The lab tech would be waiting for it, and they, oh, no, you're missing a piece, and they would go in and, well, you're still, so scrape the rest of that out, get it out of you. Not anymore. No, they wait a couple of weeks. So you have to come back in, get reopened up. And it's a whole new process of paying for everything again and again. Why do they do this? Money. At whose expense? In this case, Jenny's expense. Well, and mine, and the kids, and yours, and the classes, and so many other things that she's involved in. We all pay for it in one way or another. Why? Money. Greed. They don't have a desire to help people, but to get their money. The desire for money may lead a person into the wrong ways of getting it, as we see online all the time. Christians and non-Christians alike have been sucked in by this greed, and they've been willing to do whatever it takes, all kinds of evils, to get the money they wanted. I don't want that to happen to me. I most certainly don't want that to happen to anyone else. So how do people who have money, which includes all of us to one degree or another, how do we keep from letting money destroy our lives? Verses 17 and 19. Paul tells Timothy, instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is life indeed. Take hold of that which is life indeed, real life, where you'll find true joy. I like that. Instruct them who are rich in this present world not to be conceited, arrogant, thinking, I can do this, or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches. We can think of several godly men in the Bible who did just that. Hezekiah is the first one that pops in my mind. I'm going to come in here and show you all the treasures of the temple. We got this. Or David, the man after God's own heart. You know what? Let's count the men. Let's see how big our military is. Let's count the people. And even his counselor said, don't do this. But he did. He did. Our riches must not make us proud. We must not set our hope on the things of wealth. We are also told to use our wealth here by Paul to do good. And one of the good things is Alex spearheaded this of helping out the Maui Church of Christ. And the amount of money this small little congregation has given is tremendous. It's tremendous. What a lot of good works we are doing here with the Lord's money. And we're told, finally, that such wise and generous use of wealth lays up treasures in heaven. I wish I remembered the passage in Malachi. It's chapter 4, I think, where God tells them, if you bring in your sacrifice, you get the right attitude, I will bless you beyond belief if you just do this. And I believe that still applies today. If we give with a cheerful heart, with the right kind of attitude, God will give us more so that we will give more. And if we do it the right way, in the way he instructs us to do it, he will give to us. And I've seen that happen. Through the teaching of the New Testament, we realize that having wealth is not a sin, but that it is a very great responsibility. And here I am. I'm toward the end of my lesson. I must have passed up that Billy Graham quote. It was about how having the right attitude with money will solve most of our problems. If you had the right attitude about money. And I get what he's saying. I do get it. But that's not it. Having the right attitude. When you looked at the whole passage of what Paul is saying here, it's so much more than that. It's our desires. And then he moves on to the love of money, which all focuses on our desire. It's fixing the heart, fixing who we are. We can help people fix their attitude of money for a little while, but eventually, if we don't fix the heart, it's not going to change things for long. They'll go right back into the same rut they were found themselves in before. I've seen people get out of debt only to find themselves back in debt again because they never fix anything. Or January comes along, they have their New Year's resolution to lose weight, and they lose it all, but they haven't changed their eating habits. And so by the end of that, they got it all back because the heart has not changed. So are we content? Have we learned to be thankful and grateful for what we have, not wanting anything more? Are we trying to live simply without amassing things so that we can be free in our time and our money to do good works? I know it's hard. I run into the same issues myself. I don't want to do these things, but I live in a fallen world. I want to lay up treasures in heaven. Our attitude about money is a serious matter. What we do with it will make a difference for eternity. Jesus said that we cannot serve both God and money. Paul tells us that the key attitude with regard to money and things is contentment. It begins there. Do you have those necessities you need? Be content. And if you have more, praise the Lord. And use it and give it away. Give it to those who have need. But do it in a good steward way. When we focus on God and put our hope and our trust in Him, then we can be thankful for what we have and can live on whatever He provides for us. Let's be sure we get this matter straight in our minds and in our hearts. because that's where it begins. The true life is in Christ and not in money. And I know we know this. And I bet you the folks over there in Ephesus, where Timothy was preaching to, I bet you they knew this as well. They had the preaching of Paul. I'm sure they heard from Barnabas. They also are hearing from Timothy, but they needed the reminder. We need it too. It's easy to fall into the trap because we think, well, we need this, or I better start storing up for this or storing up for that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but don't fall into those traps of letting it become the main focus. Oh, I need to get that second job so we can take care of these bills, and boy, the money starts rolling in, and some people just don't want it to stop. I see it happen, and it happens more often than not. And it starts with the heart. So how is your heart? Is it right with God? Is your desire for Him? You can't say, well, my desire is for God and it's for money, and I can balance it out just fine. Your desire can be for one thing and one thing only. It's got to be for God. And everything else focuses on Him that you do. Our desire must be for Him. Where is your heart this evening? Let's think about that.